skills. Activities target specific skills that students need to develop. So generally there's 4 different kinds of skills. There's reading skills, writing skills, speaking, and listening skills. Reading, I'll just highlight a few of these for you. We don't have time to go into depth about all of them. There's many, many different skills, right? Well, I'll just mention a few. So one of the reading skills that's really essential is identifying the main idea. Students absolutely need to be able to do this when they're reading something, not only to demonstrate their comprehension, but in order to talk about what they've just learned, in order to really, really understand what they've learned. The next one, writing skills, I'll just talk about paragraph cohesion. This is essential within writing to have a certain cohesiveness within your paragraph structure, to have an introductory sentence, some supporting evidence, a concluding sentence that all discuss one simple idea. Lastly, I'll just mention speaking skills. My favorite one to teach is communication strategies. So think about different scenarios where we have a different purpose for communicating. We use different types of language. So for example, if we were making a complaint to a store manager versus if we were asking for clarification within a classroom or trying to sell something to somebody, in each one of those situations, we'll use different sets of language in order to communicate for a specific purpose. The next section is on assessment. I'll talk about assessment tools. I'll talk about performance-based assessment and promoting self-correction. So generally speaking, assessment tools fall into 2 categories, formal and informal. So formal being tests, quizzes, exams, assignments, student evaluations, report cards, those very traditional assessment tools. Then there's informal, peer review, group work, in-class presentations, and participation, etc. I think it's important to make sure that we develop rubrics of evaluation, that we give students the criteria beforehand to promote objectivity and transparency within the classroom. This really, from students' perspective, I think equals fairness. Lastly, I'll just mention that feedback is very important. It's very important to have specific feedback and for it to come in a variety of forms. Okay, our next slide is on performance-based assessments. These are quite popular nowadays within English learning environments for several reasons. They give students multiple opportunities to demonstrate learning. They allow students to demonstrate the application of their knowledge. And some examples are journals, presentations, portfolios, etc. An example which I like talking about from my personal experience is audio speeches at Seoul National University. Within conversation classes, we got students to record an audio speech on a topic that was given to them 3 different times during the semester, and then we gave them feedback on intonation, pronunciation, clarity, vocabulary usage, structure, and reasoning and evidence. This was particularly successful, I think, because students could track their progress over time, so they could see their development. Next, I'll talk about promoting self-correction. This is something I learned through personal experience when teaching at Seoul National University. At the beginning in writing class, I used to correct all the students' mistakes. Labored over their papers for hours and hours and corrected everything for them. And what I realized at one point was that I was working much too hard with little benefit to the students because students were relying on me to make their corrections for them. So what I decided was to develop a new approach. So I analyzed the common errors that Korean students were making, created an index of those errors, categorized them, gave them some examples, and color-coded it so that I gave them a handout at the beginning of the semester, and what they would do when I was marking their papers, what I would do is to highlight specific sections with a different color, and they would then look it up in the index of errors that they had been given, and then they'd make the correction themselves. The result was a noticeable improvement in students' ability to recognize and correct their own mistakes, and The added benefit was it was more efficient with my time. I'll just mention briefly that peer review is also very useful in promoting self-correction, because if students can correct each other, then they can often learn to identify the mistakes that they're making. So the last section is on teaching style. I'll talk about group dynamics, effectiveness and efficiency, and the need for balance. So group dynamics is important in any classroom environment because every class is unique. It's important for instructors to be responsive to the class as a whole. So to understand the dynamic that forms within the class and to really manage that and guide the class. Now, we want to maximize participation in a task-based learning environment, and this means to appeal to different levels of ability and different learning styles. Also, in terms of group activities, I'll just note that often, I know that Korean students can be a bit shy sometimes, so they'll just sit there when you give them an assigned group task. And the way around this, the way to sort of work through this is to assign them different roles within their group to promote accountability. Effectiveness and efficiency, I think it's important that instructors have a commitment to doing what works best for their students. This means that they need to be continually evaluating the effectiveness of the material that they're using, tailoring the material to fit student needs, whether it be for the interests and personal goals of each student or their different learning styles. And lastly, to ask for and listen to student feedback, right? So there's course evaluations for that, surveys, and informal comments throughout the semester. Lastly, I'll just mention balance. I think balance is very important for a good instructor because they've got to balance the university's perspective with their own personal perspective. So for me, that means responsibility and creativity. So on the one hand, I want to make sure that the students are satisfied with the course that they've taken. From the university's perspective, this would be very important. To fulfill on the promises of the course and to adhere to the academic standards of excellence that Seoul National University upholds. On the other hand, I have a commitment to myself, which is to grow, to learn, to initiate new ideas, to constantly challenge myself, and to be passionate and really engaged in the material that I'm presenting to students. In conclusion, I've covered the 5 areas which I think are essential to any good lesson. I've shared with you a few of my thoughts on each section that from my experience seem most relevant to university level English instruction in Korea. And I thank you for your attention and for giving me this opportunity to display my knowledge and understanding to you. And I look forward to meeting you all in the near future. Thank you.